A job description is quite a useful piece of information going to interview, and often the only informational reference while preparing for that interview. And I do honestly recommend everyone to read the job description prior to both the telephone screen and the on-site interview, but the reason for doing this video is to give you a bit more insight on how these job descriptions are actually designed, and talk a bit about the job description for an employer's perspective, and then give you some reference points of what can you do to further improve your chances given all this information. So first things first, the job becomes available because of one of these two scenarios. Either it's a new role, in other words the company is growing, either it's a replacement role, in other words they're trying to replace someone. And as function of this, the company has slightly different processes to define, hey, what does the ideal candidate look like for this role? And especially larger companies are pretty serious about defining the ideal candidate and the strengths of the ideal candidate. Now, from then on, the so-called requirements or the pre-job description goes through a couple of hands until eventually it's going to get posted on social media, on the company's jobs website, and so on and so forth. Now, because it's going to pass through so many hands, it will inevitably lose a little bit of information, and different people interpret these requirements slightly differently. So also the one person usually posting this job description on the jobs website, for example, will have the opportunity to pick from different templates of similarly looking roles, and the temptation will be to post that older job description that does not contain all the information that the company is really looking for from an ideal candidate. So needless to say, the job description is not necessarily what the company is actually looking for, and the first reason being the communication and the temptation to use templates. Now, the second reason why a job description is not so accurate is because a company oftentimes has no interest in being super transparent about the ideal candidate for the sake of protecting themselves against candidates that could simply prepare. I don't know, if you prepare for 1 week to master a specific skill, you can significantly improve your chances to pass through an interview, whereas a company is not interested in candidates that would fit into this scenario. So that's why they prefer not to be as explicit as you might expect them to be from this job description. And this actually happens all the time, that candidates have no idea what they're looking for, what the company is looking for, or they get one idea and then during the interview it's a completely different thing. And I'm not only talking about the phone interviews, but also, sadly, for the on-site interviews as well. So it does happen that you go all the way to the on-site and you realize the job that you're applying for has nothing to do with the job description. But those are more isolated scenarios. Now, what can you do to protect yourself from this, knowing that a company usually doesn't have much interest to publish an accurate job description? The first and most important thing that you can do is to ask them, hey, what are the 3 most important elements of this role? What are you really looking for here? And if the company is a high-performing company, they usually won't tell you, but still you can inquire, or you can ask your friends about this. It's essentially a hack, but it's something that's super valuable if you can find out. Or what does the ideal candidate look like? You could open up the discussion this way if you feel like you can do this. Or if you feel like the phone interview went well, then towards the end you could simply ask them this question. Even if it won't be useful for that specific phone interview, but it might be useful for the on-site interview. And sadly, don't be surprised if they don't know either at that point. But still, asking them, it doesn't cost you a lot, and the benefits could be immense, could be actually huge, because if you know exactly what they're looking for, you can ramp up your performance exactly on the elements that they are really interested in, their scoring mechanism. So this would be one thing. The other thing that I notice many successful candidates do is to actually read the room. when you're talking to someone, if you talk to someone for enough time and you're paying particular attention to what they're saying, you will find out whether if they're happy with your answer, but that's pretty straightforward, or whether if you're giving them the answers that they want to hear, and furthermore, what are they actually looking from your answers. And the best candidates, that's what they do in their on-site interviews. They read the room. So I'd very much encourage you to read the room during these interviews and to learn to adapt yourself to the specific requirements of that role. For example, if you're technically skilled and you're applying for, I don't know, a position in AWS, and you smell like they are looking for stories when you work with end customers, or where you're working with with difficult external customers, then it most likely means they are looking to see on whether you can sell, whether you can help drive AWS adoption, right? So you should switch from a primarily technical answer to a more customer-focused, customer-friendly answer. So this would be one example. But the idea is, the best candidates always adapt to the situations and learn more as they go through the interviewing process. And after all, if you think about it, the company, a high-performing company, always prefers these types of candidates who adapt, and who learn to get going with what they have in a job interview.